Hello. Now, welcome to my blog, Ruby Gets Real. Now, a little history about Ruby Gets Real. I did start this a long time before the actual dates on the current visible posts, because I used to use it as a blog which was exposing my heart and soul to the world. That's right, Ruby Gets Real. The idea was to just talk about things that I was journeying through, like just different transitions in my life, different questions I had about things. And that's what I originally had done with it. Well, I've kind of transitioned Ruby Gets Real into a book blog. And so then I took all those posts that I put on there before and I just put them into drafts, and they're not visible because I wanted to just focus on other people's wisdom instead of just my own. But I didn't want to shut that out. I didn't want to shut out my own discovery of what I was learning through the reads that I was reading. And so what I've done with Ruby Gets Real is I read a book and I get moved by it. And if it sends me someplace on my journey, I call it a rocket read. And those are the books that make it into my blog. And so what I've done is journey through it. So the posts aren't really book reviews. They're me journeying through each read. So then you see what each read has done. It's opened up more questions. It's opened up more more wondering, more movement in my journey. And so if you read some of these, you may discover things about me you didn't know before, but that's okay, because for me, you know what, it may not be easy for me to get this stuff out to people in person, but it's so easy to put it here because I'm not seeing those faces that I think I might hurt one day with the actual discoveries that I'm learning in life. So that's what you have, right? So if you read anything on either my poetry blog or my Ruby Gets Real blog and you say, I didn't know that about her, well, it's hard to tell people stuff like that, right? When you go for coffee, you don't go into the basement like I did on my said on my Enneagram video. You don't go into the basement with a person, or you don't go into their closet. Well, welcome to my closet. That's what these are. This is my basement and this is my closet, and it keeps me functioning, it keeps me breathing, it keeps me living, it keeps me going another day when I can be honest and real. So I do that on my blog. So welcome to my closet. Anyway, Ruby Gets Real. So it's got really a lot of the same format. The blog posts themselves are the same format as Precious Poetry. And so the blog posts themselves are the books, right? So the books and the introduction to the author a little bit, and I go in there and I put my stuff in there, right? So I put my thoughts and my journeys, and not every post is an identical replica of the other one. So if I read a book, I might go in a different direction on a blog post. So whatever works. This is a journey. So I get a book and I read it and I go on a journey with it. So the last one right now that I have on my blog is a book by Houston Smith called The World's Religions. I just finished that one. And when I title them, I don't just do the title. I put the title and the author in there, but something that actually is part of the journey for me. So what did this book do to me? How am I going to put this in a title? Give me 3 words that this book has done for me. And that's usually what is in the description. So for this one, it's the butterfly view, because Houston took me on a view like a butterfly, lifted me up out of my caterpillar world and up into the clouds or whatever, wherever the butterflies go. It says here, take a look at world religions. This is what Houston Smith did for me. And so then I go and I talk about that. I bring quotes in because the voice of the author is just as important as my voice, if not very more important. But I mix those up a little bit, right? So I will highlight my thoughts are going to be in black. The author's thoughts will be in a different color. And a lot of times I use the color in the actual picture, right? So if there's in Houston, he's got this tan, he's got kind of a tannish green in the title, a tan jacket. So then I make the colors of his writing in tan, just to match the picture is basically what I've done there. Right, so you can see there's a lot of tan, there's a lot of his thoughts, and then I'll put a quote in, and then I'll talk a little bit about it, and that's going to be the blog post. And then over here on the side, like I did with Precious Poetry, I have a link back to Precious Poetry. So my blogs are interconnected. So if you want to get into one, you can just go in there and find it. And then I have Ruby Gets Real Pages. So I also have rocket read. I call them rocket reads because they send me on a trajectory in life, right? So if I read a book and it does nothing for me, it usually doesn't end up here. It just goes back, right? But if it sends me somewhere, if it gives me something more fuel for my journey, then that's why it ends up on here. So I call them rocket reads. And that's what you're going to see. If you want to know a little bit more about what a rocket reads, I have a page about that, right? But I just kind of explained in what that was. And then I have an index of my rocket reads. So here you go. And these are all in alphabetical order, again, according to the title of the book. So if you wanted to scroll down here and I told you I read a book like Speaking of Jesus from Carl Madirus. I read that book a long time ago, but I reread it. And then I did a blog post on that. Boom, there we go. Carl Madirus speaks of Muslims, Christians, and Jesus. So this one is, I have a few authors where I might have a couple books that I want to put into one post. And so I did a couple of his books. I actually had the hard copy books of Carl Madirus. I got them a long time ago. And so he has two books, Speaking of Jesus and Muslims, Christians, and Jesus. And so I read those books, and then I did the blog post with both of them. And on both of them. So that's what, so there's a few of those like that, right? Sometimes I'll be enthusiastic about one author and I'll just merge his books into one post. So let's go back to the index. And let's go to Becoming Michelle Obama. So I did hers. Now, what I do is usually, this is a different one again too, because usually what I take is I take the author's picture and I take the book picture and I put them together. Well, Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, had her picture on the book cover already. So then I went and I found a cute little book, a cute little picture of her and her brother, because her story starts there, right? So it's part of the journey of her getting to who she is. And it's a beautiful journey. And I love that book. And I'm going to say something too, that every book on this blog, I would recommend if you want to go ahead and read it. Go ahead, like they've done a lot. Some of them I've put on there, and maybe I put a caveat on there saying, you know what, if you don't want to go on a trajectory anyway, if you're comfortable with who you are, maybe this isn't the book for you. So so I have a couple of articles that I've written here, from ranting to reading. What I read matters, but why I read really matters is a good one in there. And then I've got the same profile in there as well. So I have actually, that's different. And then I got a blog archive like I do in my post. So I started archiving my books back in February of 2020. And that's really when I started reading a lot. It was just before I became unemployed. For the first time in the last 2 years. And so I did a lot of reading. In August, I got 7 books in there. Like August was a lot of reading in there. So one thing about my books, if you look at them, you will say that's a very eclectic mix. So I've got like Wayne Jacobson, Leslie Hazelton, I've got Shane Claiborne to Brian McLaren, Barbara Brown Taylor, Peter Rollins, Rachel Held Evans, Bart Ehrman, Frank Schaefer, Frank Viola, Peter Enns, Richard Rohr, Kevin Chandler, Rob Bell. So there's a lot of, if you take a bird's eye view of this, you'll say, well, that's very progressive Christianity coming up. Well, there's a lot of that in there, yeah, because I'm on a journey out of what was very narrow look at the at faith and spirituality and stuff. So I dive into uh, a lot of authors that are going on journeys as well. And you'll have there's books in here by atheists as well, because they're on a journey and they've been on a journey, and I'm all about journey books. So I got a lot of reads in here that are educational. Yeah, educational. So you get some Bart Ehrman in there, who's a Bible scholar. Pete Enns is a Bible scholar. So a lot of those books are very more detailed into the uh, the heady stuff, right? So if you want to get into heady stuff, that's where you're going to go for those. But then there's ones that are on journeys, and then there's ones that are just stories. We Carry Kevin is one of my favorites, because that one took me on a trajectory of love. A beautiful story of some friends who carry their friend around Europe who's got a muscular illness where he can't walk, and so they carry him on a backpack. That's one of the, right. So a lot of these books are helping me process my journey, but then I get stories, and like Becoming from Michelle Obama. Like, I wanted to get into her story and see what that was, what that did for me. And Mary Beth Chapman, Choosing to See, was another one. Story she wrote 5 years after her daughter died. Very tragic story, but a very moving story as well. And so that is pretty much the blog. If you have, I have a search engine here. I've never really tried it on myself, but if you want, you look at blogs that talk about, like if I go in here and I type in, I don't know, love. Let's see what comes up when I type in love. If I do a search, oh, Jared Bias's book comes up, Love Matters More. So it'll bring me to a blog that talks about Universal Christ, Richard Rohr. It'll bring that one up too, because it may look for keywords in there. So Rob Bell's book, Love Wins, comes up. So isn't that interesting? And Jamie Wright's Very Worst Missionary. I love that book, but maybe it's not for everybody. So anyway, that's the journey. That's it. That's what I have for Ruby Gets Real. It's got the background. I love the background. It's got a surfer. He's riding a wave. And that's so much of the picture of the journey. I don't surf. I've never surfed, but I like the picture of it, where you're in the ocean. You're not trying to get out of the ocean. You're just trying to ride the waves. And that is exactly what I've been doing on my journey. So just learning to ride the waves. Alrighty. Thank you for being here. I'll catch you later. Bye.